I want to thank our proud sponsor, BetUS. Go ahead, check them out at betus.com. Good evening, good afternoon. Welcome back to High Top Sports Oregon. I'm Cody the Professor. We got Derek the Duck, our Duck Insider, and we're talking about 2026 already. Yes, I know everybody's like 2025 class already over. It's signed. It's heck, most of them are on campus. Um, so we are on the very edge of 2026. There have already been some commits, but we're going to talk about a couple of guys that Dan Lanning has in his grasp. First of all, the Big Nacho. That's what we're calling him here. Emmanuel the Big Nacho. He is a big fella. Offensive tackle, 6 foot 6.5, 245 pounds, hailing out of Rockville, Maryland. Number five nationally, number two offensive tackle, number one in the state of Maryland, 5-star composite. What do you think?
I think that is a large human. Yeah, for a high school senior, that is a big man. He has his position ranking in this year's class for a reason. The man is an absolute force out there. The state of Maryland as a whole has been, on an uptick in terms of athletes they've been turning out. So pretty good competition over there. Someone who this is going to be a recruitment. I know we're sitting here in January. I can confidently look you in the face and say this recruitment will not be over until signing day of next year. When you have a player in a premium position like this, and he's in an area of the country that there is not one massively strong pipeline. It's not like Ohio State typically dominates Maryland or the Georgias or the Alabamas or even Penn States of the world. It's one of those kind of Wild West states in terms of where those recruits go. Oregon, they were able to pull out Ifeatu Odigwu from Maryland in last year's cycle, who, we're going to see on the field very much this year. So they have a history of dipping their fingers into the Maryland pot. But someone I'm really excited that Oregon's tied to early on in his recruitment. Obviously, I think we'll see him on campus multiple times before signing day of next year. He's a prime candidate for Dan to try to get in for one of their Saturday Night Live events that they have, where they bring in all their blue chip players they're trying to sign in this year's cycle and kind of get them all on campus at the same time, and deal with recruiting in that way. But I'm really excited that Oregon's tied to him at this point. It sounds like there's definitely a mutual interest. That doesn't mean a whole lot this early on in the recruitment. However, you do want to be one of those top schools in his eyes at this point, and Oregon is one of those for him.
For sure. And the SEC is going to come and swing for him also. Georgia, Florida, Alabama, all schools of interest with him also. Think about this recruitment kind of like Jordan Seaton, going to go down to the wire.
Hmm.
He is the best offensive tackle. They do not build these kids like this every single day at 6'6", 345 pounds. He's ready to go. Balled out in the All American Under Armour game. And, as a junior, you're going up against seniors. It's one of those things he is going to be on everybody's wish list for sure.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's why I'm saying he could commit somewhere in June, and there is zero part of me that is sold that he's going to end up at that location. That is just not the reality for offensive tackles, and especially when you have like that handful of premium players per class. Offensive tackle is typically one of those positions where it's very top heavy. You'll have those 2 to 3 kids per cycle who are going to come in and they're going to be able to make an immediate impact just because of their development in high school. But it might be one of those things where you have, the number 5 overall offensive tackle in a cycle and he might not see the field. It's one of those positions where it's really tough to come in and make your presence felt early on. And he has the physicality and the traits to, be an immediate impact for whichever school is lucky enough to land his commitment.
For sure. Let's go ahead and get to the signal caller, quarterback Jared Curtis. Right now, Crystal Ball to Georgia, but listen, this recruitment is nowhere near close to over. Hailing out of Nashville, 6'4", 225 pounds, and a true prototypical big arm gunslinger. He has the arm, and listen, guys, I I'm gonna say this: I think his recruitment to Georgia is going to be very questionable per what Gunnar Stockton does this year. If there's no development of Gunnar Stockton, Georgia Georgia's not going to have a chance at the true 5-star.
Yeah, we'll see. It's everybody we're going to be talking about these are going to be players who I can promise you their commit or their recruitment will not be done until at a very minimum the late cycle. And it's but once again, quarterback obviously being a premium position, we kind of know the fluidity of that. And if you are one of those top quarterbacks in the cycle, particularly pro style quarterbacks, they're typically pretty highly sought after, and that's what Jared Curtis is. Um, I think this recruitment, it's not even going to be just the South Carolina, Georgia, Oregon that he's slated to visit right now. I fully expect the Ohio States, the Alabamas, the Tennessees of the world, to come knocking and try to, dip their hand in the pot too. You don't have a player of that caliber and limits his options to 3 schools as we sit in January. So he's wide open. He's one who has been on campus to Eugene multiple times already. I believe he was at both Saturday Night Lives last year, both of those events. And had made it known that he was going to be back on campus again. Obviously, Oregon was the first school he locked down his official visit with, and I think that's coming in early June, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, once again, someone who you want to be tied to very early on. Obviously, evaluators are very high on him for a reason, and currently projects as a late first round, quarterback. So someone we're hoping to land the commitment of, but it's a very 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 long road till the end of that recruitment.
For sure. And then let's go ahead. Let's get into the third guy. Um, and a hard commit already. Kendra Harrison, tight end, 5-star at the composite, 6'7", 243, out of North Carolina. Dan Lanning has already got a couple of kids, a good quarterback too in the top. I mean, he's in the top 15 quarterbacks too. But let's go ahead and talk about the big, tall tight end. He is number 9 nationally on the composite, number 1 tight end in the nation, number 2 player out of North Carolina.
Absolutely, absolute freak athlete. One I talked about a little bit before we jumped on the cast here. He's going to be a dual scholarship player where he's going to come in, probably play a little power forward for the basketball team with Dana Altman, and obviously translates to the football field at tight end with Dan Lanning. But someone who is just a freak of an athlete for his size. It's like, if you look at his high school tape, you can see his size. You can see the difference. It feels like it's a man playing with boys, but it's not even the sheer size that really sticks out. It's how he uses that size and how he moves with it. It's just one of those things where you're watching a game and you can clearly see the level difference between him and the level of competition. And it's not like North Carolina is a bad area for high school football. It's typically not one of the powerhouses you think of, but they do produce NFL talent every year. They have a pretty good little system down there. So for the commitment to take place this early on is great. But once again, I said it for the other two who are currently not committed, and I'll say it for the one who is committed. This is not over. This is not over whatsoever. I think North Carolina will come back into play into things. I think it's pretty attractive that Bill Belichick's obviously there in North Carolina now, and then they have a very historic basketball program too. Um, so we're gonna see a ton of schools come knocking. It's gonna be a thing where Oregon fans are feeling good right now, but all of a sudden we see he might have 4 or 5 visits lined up. It's just that's the nature of the beast. Once again, tight end is another one of those premium positions where you don't see a lot of guys in the cycle who are able to come in and make an immediate impact on the field as a true freshman. He has that size, speed, capability, and the tools to do so. So he's someone who I really, really think is going to become a very heavy priority in this year's class, especially after what happened to tight end in last year's class. I think he's going to be one of the crown jewels of this class, and probably the 1 to 2 commits Dan has right now that he does everything in his power to hold on to.
For sure. And don't forget, South Carolina, and I'm sure Clemson will kick the tires on them also. Um,
Mm-hmm.
South Carolina with Lenore Sellers is a lot of upside on the offense to sell. It's going to be tough to keep this kid. Obviously, Belichick up in North Carolina, not too far away from him, and then Clemson with Dabo. So it's going to be a tough one to fend off some of the other local schools. That's not even the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Tennessees
Right.
that are going to go after him. That's just a local. You throw a 500-mile cast net to where you could drive close to him. So
Yeah, I we'll see. It's the one thing he said early on before he even committed. He's like, distance doesn't matter. I'm open to the country. Committed to Oregon, said the same thing. I don't care about distance. Not a factor for me. Now, to say that in January of the year before you end up signing, and to be saying that when you're signing your documents in December are two very different things.
seen it
And
before.
we'll see. Right, we've seen it 100 times before. It's especially with Eugene. Oregon is a university where it's not easy to get to. You're not going to find a ton of direct flights from, you know, North Carolina to Eugene or Texas to Eugene or Tennessee to or wherever. It's just that's not the reality they live in. Um, so I think logistics will probably play a factor at some point. We saw it play a big factor with Lincoln Kier, the 5-star tight end in this year's cycle. Logistics played a massive role in it and ultimately ended up signing with in-state Kansas State. Could we see the same thing with Kendra Harrison? That's to be seen, but I expect Dan and company to do everything they can to hold on to his commitment.
For sure. Let's go ahead do we got to do the part that pays the bills, BetUS. Check them out betus.com. We got the Rams versus the Philadelphia Eagles NFL divisional playoff game. 6.5 is the spread. They're giving the Rams 6.5. And the over is 42. I'm gonna stay away from the over under. Go ahead, give me the points. I think it's gonna be close.
Mm, mm. Honestly, I was kind of leaning LA points. I think it's going to be close, and I don't know. It feels like it could be a low scoring game. It feels like it's in the air. Don't bet your mortgage on it, but give me the under. The under. What do we say? 42.
Yeah, under
Yeah,
42.
that's a pretty low, total. Um, However, it's just kind of got that feel to it. It feels like it could be one of these games where we're looking at a 17-10 type of game when the clock strikes zero. So we'll see. Should be a good one.
For sure. All right, guys. I want to thank our proud sponsor, BetUS. Go ahead, check them out, betus.com for all your gambling needs. Use the code YouTube150, get 150% back on your first deposit, 125 on your second deposit, up to $2,000. That's 150% back on your first deposit, 125 on your second, third deposit, up to $2,000. All right. Another video. We're definitely going to keep our ear to the ground. I don't think there's going to be a flurry of commits this week. I think there's definitely going to be some more crystal balls thrown around. I think that there's definitely going to be some guys that start popping up. The beat writers start putting, look at this guy, this interior offensive lineman, or this D end, or this linebacker. As these junior films start popping, they're getting out right now on Huddle. That's going to affect what their stock does. There's going to be some position movement, stuff like that. Heck, even the kids are transferring in high school right now, so it's
Mm.
it's the wild world of amateur football at this point.
Oh, 100%. And that's not to mention, you have all these private camps, the On3 camps, the 247 camps that these kids
Yep.
go to just all of a sudden magically raise their recruiting rankings on that particular website. So we're going to see a lot of that. There's a lot that happens in the off season.
Yep.
I'm excited. I enjoyed the off season in the sense of like the stuff that happens behind the scenes, the recruiting, the visits. Obviously, I don't like the downtime from January till late August. But there's a ton of things that are happening behind the scenes, and if you guys are trying to stay in the know, this is a spot to be.
For sure, yeah. Verified if he's 6'1" or 6'5", who's lying, birth certificates, I don't know. You know, it's crazy. It's funny because the reporters, like, you can see that they're trying to like size him up. Like, okay, I'm 6 foot. Is he really? Is Big Nacho really 6'6.5"? They're like trying to
Hmm.
guess. They can't walk around with a scale on him. Yeah, does he look 345? Then somebody gets on the board. I think he's really 310. He's not
Hmm.
345, and oh boy, the flurry comes out. But it's talking season. It's lion season, and that's you know what? We're all suckers for engulfing it.
we're all out here chasing the offseason natty. Oregon
Yeah.
is going for their third consecutive offseason natty this year. I'm really hoping we bring it home again this year.
Yep. Florida with
You know,
Lagway and company. I mean, the
right, yeah,
5-star wide receivers we got. Yeah, we're definitely winning the Natty.
you're right. I mean, you can ask SMU fans right now, and I'm pretty sure they're convinced they're winning the natty. So
Yeah.
everybody's winning the natty at this point. And that's what makes the offseason
Vandy
so
on the
fun.
up and up. They got
Hey, Diego
Diego
Pavia.
one more year.
Hey, hell yeah. I tell you what, right now, I'm a Vandy fan. I'm loving me some Diego Pavia.
So, all right, guys, we will see you later. I am Cody the Professor. We got Derek the Duck. Thank our proud sponsor, BetUS, and we will see you later.